Hello, my fam. So you're welcome to my page, and today we're going to learn how to make step-by-step monostrap bustier ballerina ball gown. A mouthful, right? It's gorgeous and beautiful. So just stay tuned if this is what you want to learn. So first and foremost, we're going to deal with having to measure our paper. So I'll deal with the front first. First, half inch, always half inch at the top. So I'll measure the half inch at the top and then rule it and then measure our shoulder. So our shoulder here is 7.5 inches, and then the entire length. We have 7, we have 9.5, we have 12, then we have the bottom part, we have 15. So we're going to mark it. I'll mark and you'll see how it is. So this is the measurement we're making use of. So we have upper bust, we have under bust, and then we have the waistline. So I'll draw and rule all those lines so it to be clear. So right now I'll just join and link up our upper bust to our shoulder at exactly that 7.5 inch I just told you about for the shoulder length, and then link up all other lines I told you about. Our upper bust, remember our upper bust is 7 inches, our bust point is 10.5, our under bust is 12 inches, and then our waist is 15 inches. And voila, we all have all this ready. So we'll move on to measuring the sides and the shapes. So first and foremost, it's a bustier, so we're going to go in by 3.5 inches because the bust point to bust point, nipple to nipple measurement is 7.5. So we divided that, or 7 inches. So we divided that into 3.5, and then that's what we're going to mark on our bust, on our under bust, and our waist, and we'd rule from the waist to the up on the bust. So after getting that, we're going to measure 1 inch below the bust point and then link up the bottom part, that's the waist, up all the way to that point up there, leaving 1 inch space there. So now for the neckline, I did 3 and 3 inches, as 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom part. So you can even go lower, but we're going to have a mono strap, so that's not necessary. So what I want to just do is just divide this into half. So I measured it, divided into half, and then we have 2.25. Then I marked it, that's the midpoint, and linked it up to this bottom part. This is one of the simplest way to do a bustier. So we're going to go wide by 0.75, and this point to 0.75. So you add the two of them together, we have 1.5 inches. So we'll just link up from that point all the way to this down part where we've linked up to the bust point. So we'll link it up like so, and we're good. Then after doing that, now we're going to measure and give our that for the bottom, our under bust. So we'd measure 0.75 instead of 1 inch at both sides. So it just depends on how busty the person is. If the person is not busty, if the person is busty, you'd go for 1 inch. If the person is not busty, you can go for less. So in this case now, I linked up our 0.75 at the bottom and at the top. Some people half inch if they're less busty. So just depending on what you want to do and how you want your cup to come out. So I want it to come out protruding and standing on its own through the bustier you're going to make. So this is what I did. So I linked it up with our curve ruler like so, and linked it up with our ruler like this, and we're good. Wasn't that so easy? So now from this point, you'd know that whatever we take out from here, from the dart, we're going to add to the other side. So I came down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant, linked it up, but there'll be no need to come down by 1 inch yet. I'll show you why you should have added the 1.5 first before coming down with the slant. So you see, it's 1.5. So I'm going to add that 1.5 to the side. So I add it here and then come down by 1 inch at that point I've marked, this point here, and I'll come down by 1 inch and mark it, use our ruler, and you see it's slightly higher up there. Can you see this slight difference? Exactly. So I'll link it up like this and we're good. So now at the other side, we'll take all the other measurements, leaving out our dart. So let's cancel out the parts where we're going to cut out. So these are the parts that are going to be cut out. So I'll mark it properly so that you see that this part is going to be cut out. Now on the side, you see what's happening. When you fold it or sew it in, you see it just balances in well. So the normal measurement we'll take, so we'll take the measurement for the bust. The bust is 8 inches. There's no space in between, so we'll just add that 8 inches, and then we'll measure here. What we have here is 2.75. Then we take that 2.75, move to the other part, and then our under bust. So our under bust is 7 inches, so we'll just mark that 7 inches there. And then because that's everything is going to be divided by 4, all our measurements, our bust, our under bust, our waist, and then remember to add 1 inch, 1 inch for ease. So you do all the joining and the ease. So as time goes on, when we join all the parts together, you'd see how we would reduce all we have to reduce. So measure here, take to the other parts, measure your upper bust like so. So for in this case, our upper bust is 7.75 inches. So we'll mark it there. Then you see that's how it should be. You should have all you should just do is just link up that top part with that bottom part straight down, nothing more. So what I did here was I just did exactly 1.5 inches to show you the necessity of having to just link it up like that and making the curve roll. So you see 1.5 inch. I just did it straight, and then I came in, I measured the midpoint of it, and then that'll be 3.5, and then came in by 1/2 inch and linked it up like this all the way to the bottom part like this. So just stay with me, you'd see what we'll do at the end and having to cut it out. So if you had just linked it up to that point I measured there, at exactly that point, you'd see that there's no need for the cutting. I have to cut out later on. So we'll just mark all the way down, all the way to the waist. So waist to asides the darts. Let's cancel out what we're going to cut out. So mark it. You can see that's the part we're going to cut out, and then you mark here. That's 3.5. Then you add it up to that point and measure our waist. I see. And then we have our waist all the way down. So we'll mark it. Remember, all the parts divided by 4 is what we're going to use. I will measure the front, the back, and then we add our allowance. Don't forget to add your allowance of 1 inch. Remember, when you're cutting out the pattern, you're going to add 1/2 inch all around. So this is how I'm going to join all the paper together. So this is peculiar because I want to get a perfect fit. So I'm going to join all the parts together to get exactly what I want, and there will be no mistakes. So this has no room for mistakes, and so we have to take that. So this is the back part. So we're going to go down by 1/2 inch as usual, mark our 1/2 inch down, and then all other parts like we did before. So we'll just place our measuring tape and mark all the parts we need to mark. Remember our 7 inches. We'll mark it, then we come down to our 10.5 or 10 inches, our 12 inches, and then our 15 inches at the bottom part. So we'll do all that all the way down and then link it all up. So everybody, the measurement is usually different. We have 9.5, sometimes we have 10 inches, we have 10.5 for the under bust, 12 inches, and so on and so forth. So for this, these are the measurements I made use of. So I'll link it all up like this. And like we did to the back, to the front. Now for the back, remember we have our zip allowance. So that was not added here. So I'm going to add that at the end of this video. It was just an oversight. So we're going to add it. So here we're going to do 7.5, link it up together, and then do everything like we did in the front. But in this case, we're going to add that is 3.5. So we'll just mark our 3.5 all the way to the top, all the way to the upper bust, and then link it all up straight up. This doesn't need any extra activity down, so just straight up, and we'll measure our 0.75 at this point, 0.75 at that point, and then link it all up together. Join it like this and then like that, and we have our dart for the back. So you'd see why we need our zip allowance and what we're going to do to eliminates any bulge. So for the back is just putting your curve roller, linking it up like that, then having your shoulder slant, joining it this way, and we're good to go. And our back is majorly almost done. So we have our 3 inches like we did to the front, 3 inches, and then for the back part would have like, it doesn't matter. So in this part it doesn't really matter because we're going to cut out our monostrap. So this is just for formality's sake. So our 3 inches with our bottom part of 1.5 inch, and then we joined it together like this. So remember our zip allowance. Our zip allowance is meant to be like 2 inches or 1.5 inches. So I'll just take all the measurements, normal measurements for the side, add it up, and you'd see the difference it makes when we add our zip, and then how we can maneuver to ensure that we don't have a bulge at the back. So I'll mark it, and all the way down to the bottom part. So ensure that you're leaving out our that. The good thing about having to use a pattern, sew a pattern out and then measure it all over again on top. So as a fashion designer, you're going to be measuring over and over again, so that if there's any time you've mixed up something or made a mistake, you can be able to make amends and correct it immediately. If you don't take measurements, if you don't enjoy taking measurements, you should try to enjoy taking measurements, because it's necessary as a fashion designer to keep measuring over and over again just to get it perfectly, because you're a perfectionist. So now we go on to link it up like this. After linking it up, we're going to add our allowance. So don't mind that it's not straight. When we sew it together, we're going to cut it out and get a perfect fit. So I'll add the sewing allowance at the side, which is 1 inch. And now I'm going to place this is the back part. So I'm going to place my zip allowance, and see, I cut out a piece of paper and joined it with the sellotape and made our zip allowance. And I added 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches to 2 inches, your choice. So I added 1.5 inches to our zip allowance. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in by 1 inch. If you want to go in by 0.75, it's up to you. You can go in by 0.75 inches or 1 inch, and then go up by 1 inch. Can you see? Up and to the side. Are you seeing that? And then I'll link it up to the top with my ruler. The bottom part, we'll link it up to the edge like this, like so. And then at the top, we'll link it up all the way to the top part, like this, to the edge of the top part. Can you see? And then that eliminates the bulge. So the deeper the person's back, the deeper our entry inside. So we'll just replace our zip allowance at exactly the measurement we've taken before, which is 1.5 inch. And then we add it up like this. Can you see? We're good. We have our zip allowance ready and done. So we'll just add the allowance for sewing at the bottom part and cut it out. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Your likes, your subscription, your follows, making people aware of this page, so that every other person can also learn like you're learning. And then a comment below if this is what's the learning process, and if you've tried this and how it came out for you. I would love to hear your feedback. So I'll measure again and ensure I add all that needs to be added. So I measured this point, added it to that other point, and see the extra that has been added, and then I'll mark it up. So I'll mark it at that edge. You see, came out by that edge, and I'll draw a line. They'll do this on this point as well, removing our extra, our that, and then link it up. So after drawing this, I'll link it up from the top to the bottom, and we're good to go. So we can add our allowance to that part. Can you see? See the extra? And then we add our allowance to that part and cut it out. And we're good to go. We have our back part ready to sew. So now we're going to sew it all together and sew the dart. I took my time, I sewed the dart, I notched it this way, sewed the dart, sewed the front part as well by just tiny inches. And this is what we have after sewing it out. So it's our mock-up. So this mock-up now, we'll place it. Can you see how wide the arm part is? It's too wide. So I'm going to cut it and come in. So you remember that part I told you about that you would have. So I measured it and I found out that the upper bust is too wide. It was too wide, and linked it up. I knew exactly where I'm going to stop. So I measured the bust as well. So this is the perfect way to measure your bust. The front part is always different from the back part. So you add the front part to the back part and see what you have. So the bust part, that's the front part of the bust, is always larger in the front than the back part. So if you sum them all up together, it should give you the round bust measurement. Same thing with the upper bust. So you see, that part is going to be cut out because I've seen the excess of what I want. So I'm going to cut in by the excess that I've measured. So the same thing you'd also measure. Check your measurement. If there's any excess, you cut it out. If there's anything that is left out or something you need to add, you add it out. Or cut another new pattern when it's not giving you what you want, because you're aiming for perfection, and this is the way to go about it. So whatever I do on this side, I'm going to do on the other side. So just pay attention to every step of the measurement I'm going to take. So because of the other part, I don't need to cut the armpit part out. All I have to do is measure for the monostrap because of the one side. You know, it's a one sleeve dress. So would want to cut out one sleeve and leave the other sleeve. And it's a one sleeve bustier. So we'd use our curve ruler and link it up like this. So I place the curve ruler in a way that it would balance out and give me that shape I desire. So whatever shape you desire, that's what you aim for. So I'll link it up like this to the shoulder part. Can you see that? And then link it up all the way to the armpit. So what I always ensure is I want my sleeve not to be bulgy, so I ensure that it is 3 inches. So we'll just cut this out. Ensure that the sleeve, the part for the arm, is always 3 inches left after all the sewing, so it's not bulky. If it's 4 inches, I'll still slim it down and ensure that it is 3 inches for dresses like this and outfits like this. So I'll do the same thing to the back and trim it out like this. So this looks strenuous. It looks as though it's a lot of work. It is a lot more work, but it brings out perfection. You rarely hear your customers complain of amendments if you do it this way. But if you do it the normal way, sew it and finish up and be lazy about having to trim out and all that, you would surely hear of a bulge here and there and thereabouts. So I cut out the excess after all my measurements, and you can imagine, see the excess I cut out. And I still have allowance to sew for 1 inch. Can you see? So I'll use my measuring tape and measure over and over again. I measured round the waist and measured round the underbust, round the bust. Ensure that it was a perfect fit before losing everything. And remember, the side I pinned it down so that I can be able to adjust easily, while the entire part, the dart and all that, I sewed it down. You can sew the shoulder down as well, or you can use a pin to hold the shoulder and the sides. But the middle part, I joined it together. The front part, I joined it by 0.25 inches. You know that measurement on top of our sewing machine? The tiniest one is what I used in sewing the front part for the dart. So to ensure that it doesn't take a whole lot out, because I'm going to add an allowance for joining for the front part. So here are the fabrics I made use of. You see the lining, you see the hard net, you see the sleeve, the net for the mesh for the sleeve, and then we have our material on its own. Then we have our estee for the lining, and then the estee for the bustier. So here is it. I always have a mock-up of the drawing of what I want to create, because that makes me create. So that's the sleeve, and then that is the fabric. Just it, the ball gown is beautiful. So this is just a close look of what I drew out, and I have that mock-up and I keep it aside and I'll use. So this was a bridesmaid's dress, so I had several to make. So I'll show you in my next video how I create several patterns to be able to in a speedy period of time. So just watch out for that video, how to create multiple bridesmaid dresses at a very short period of time. You can just create within 3 days. You can be done with several, like 6 bridesmaid dresses and so on. So here is a lining. I put an estee on it and ironed it, and the same thing so I just cut out all I need to cut out, iron them flat, ensure that everyone matches. So if there's any excess, like you see all those estees, the excess of white there, I'll take my time and trim it off and do that all the way. You see, I notched the parts where we need to sew, so I'll know where I'm sewing, and that ensures you to sew very speedily. So this is just a mock-up of how our video is going to look like. I'm going to show you how to manage time and create multiple outfits perfectly without any error for so many people, even if it's the same style. So this is the estee, the soft cotton estee I used for the lining. You can imagine that the lining has a different color, but still you won't see it outside. So I'll show you how to perfectly sew a colored lining to a different color of lining to the outside, and it still just gives you that ballerina beautiful ball gown look. So here it is. I ironed the estee to it, remove the pin. So I have my pin cushion. So if you want to learn how to make this pin cushion, check my previous video. You can make use of scrap. Can you imagine scrap to be able to make this pin cushion? So I ironed it like this, every one of them, and then joined the estee too on the back part of it and ironed it. As a fashion designer, as a seamstress, as a tailor, you'd need a lot of ironing. If you don't enjoy ironing, then you need to hire somebody else to do this work, because you need a lot of ironing to get a beautiful finishing. What makes it even easier is the steaming iron. So here is the pattern after it has been cut out, the allowance that was added, and you can see this is the back part. And then I'll show you in the next video, because this is a lot in this video, how to make this pleats, these beautiful pleats and gathers, and then how to join our bustiers together, and then how to make a finishing in such a way that the inside will not show when you're sewing. And this is how the cup looks. Isn't this gorgeous? Just know you're going to learn a whole lot. And then how to make a waistband. I used a waistline that is so trim and so beautiful. And then see the back part finishing, the zip lining, how to sew it and lock it both back and inside. Just see the inside of the finishing, see the back part looking as if it's a dress on its own. So smooth and finely refined. So you learn all that in the next video, because this is a whole lot on its own. And this is the ball gown after it has been made, before I even attach the sleeve. And this is it. This doesn't look alike. It looks so gorgeous. I know it looks beautiful. So your comments, your likes, and tell me whether or not I did a good job of this. So stay tuned and learn on the next video. Bye.